Good morning, everybody. Sorry that I can't be with you in person, but hopefully, well, this will still be good for you. I'm going to talk about three things, but this one that I'm going to talk about first is Tai Chi and the use in physical therapy. I had to, unfortunately, go out of town, so that's why I can't be with you in person. But I did want to. So it was a long drive. I had to drive to Virginia, and when we got to the hotel, which that's where I was recording this from now, there's a bunch of speed bumps into the parking lot, and I have a horrible fear of speed bumps. But I'm slowly getting over it. Get it? Okay, so what we're going to talk about today is the use of Tai Chi in physical therapy. And Tai Chi is considered a complementary, not really an alternative type of PT, because it can definitely complement what we do. And as we'll talk about, there's a lot of evidence about using Tai Chi. So it's not really alternative. There is enough evidence about it that it's considered, an actual type of exercise that we might use. Now, it's probably considered more complementary because it does take some practice to learn how to get used to using Tai Chi. It's not something still that is very, very commonly used in exercise. So it's not something a lot of your patients will be familiar with. But it can work a lot on balance and coordination and dissociation, as we'll talk about. It can be used in pretty much any setting. It can be used in rehab. I've used it in telehealth. I've used it in the pro bono clinic. We actually had a patient who came to the pro bono clinic last spring, in the beginning of last spring, and was using Tai Chi as was one of the reasons she wanted to come to Misericordia, was because she wanted to learn to do more Tai Chi exercises. So I'm just going to give you a little background on Tai Chi. So it is based on a Chinese martial art, and it was also called a healing art. And like many martial arts, there's a mind-body connection where you're using it to both strengthen your body and your mind, improve overall energy. So Tai Chi, as I'm sure you've all seen examples of it or seen pictures of people doing it in a park, it is really focused on a lot of weight shifting movements and a lot of slow and fluid movements. Now you can look up a lot of Tai Chi videos online, and you'll see some of them where they're going very quickly, which might be a more advanced type of Tai Chi, or a lot of people have modified Tai Chi to make it a little faster to be more palatable, I would say, to people who are going to use it for a Western exercise. So you can slow it down, you can speed it up. Both of those have some challenges associated with them. Another big part of Tai Chi is really focusing on your breath. So your breath is one way where you improve your energy. The better your breathing is, the better you oxygenate your system, the better overall you can transport oxygen and therefore energy throughout your system. So Tai Chi practitioners, people who really have studied a lot of Tai Chi, will make sure that when they're talking to the person that they're working with, that they're making sure that they're focusing on their breath. So we'll do some of that today. And some of that mind-body connection really is being thoughtful about the exercises. A lot of them have names, as we'll talk about, that would make you visualize something, but also the movements, because they're a little bit different than a typical movement you might do. They're going to require you to use some coordination. So you're going to have to think about what you're doing with your arms and your legs and how you're moving your body as you're doing it. And the chi part of energy is of Tai Chi is the chi does stand for energy. So your chi is your energy. So that's the breath. And it is, of course, energy is vital for life. So the chi, just a little more about it, is just the energy that flows through your body. And so the idea of Tai Chi is that you're using your breath and your movement to increase energy, increase blood flow. And some of that energy is also can be used with the idea of, as I'm sure one of the other speakers talked about, in acupuncture, where you do use different meridians or vessels in your body to store energy and to help release energy. And that's a Chinese medicine concept. And so some Tai Chi practitioners will include something called Qigong, which is a Chinese healing art. So you may have talked about this when you talked about acupuncture recently, or acupressure, but I just wanted to talk a little bit about some of these meridians and vessels. And we're going to start, and I hope that at home, if you're watching this with someone else in your class, or if you're watching it by yourself, that you're going to kind of follow along, because we're going to work on opening up some of these meridians and getting your energy flowing. So Tai Chi focuses a lot on using the core. So it can be an exercise to really strengthen the core, especially if you're making sure that you're coaching your patient or talking to your patient about making sure that they're using the core during their exercises. So, and really, just like in Western medicine, we focus a lot on the core in order to help people shift their weight, in order to reduce pain, in order to help them move. So the core in Tai Chi is your Tantien, or your main energy source. And I'm going to try to step back a little so you can see me, but the Tantien is right here. So it's this area right here at your, at your abdomen, and that's considered your Tantien area. So we're going to focus a little more on that. And then there's some other meridians, and these are similar to where you might use these meridians for acupuncture. But in Qigong medicine, you can kind of open some of these meridians or get energy to flow through these meridians by doing some tapping exercises. So that's what we're going to do first. So if you want to get energy to flow through your bladder meridian, you would take 2 fingers and you're just going to kind of tap between your eyes, and that's going to help release some energy in your bladder meridian. So the idea isn't for you to have to pee, that's not the energy, but just to get some energy flowing again in the bladder meridian, near that, near your Tantien or your core. Your gallbladder meridians, this could be helpful for helping with digestion, helping to make sure that you're processing all the nutrients in your body. You would tap here. So again, you're going to tap 7 to 12 times on either side of your temple. Your stomach meridian is right under your eyes. So you just tap here, and again, helpful with digestion, helpful if you have any other just overall health. Then your conception vessel is considered to help stimulate and modulate your sympathetic nervous system. So you want your sympathetic nervous system, if you're going to exercise, if you have energy, so you can tap here. This is called the conception vessel, and it's also the area in the front of your spine. So you can tap that 7 or 12 times. And then the other one that's kind of going to help with that balance is your parasympathetic nervous system, which runs along the back of your spine. So if you think about when you want to calm someone down, you stimulate their parasympathetic nervous system by stroking their back maybe, or do you put your hands here? That can also, like a pacifier for a baby, that pressure between your nose and your lip can help to stimulate your parasympathetic nervous system. So we're going to tap that 7 or 12 times. So next time you're stressful or in a test, you can tap your governing vessel and help to release some parasympathetic input. Your kidney meridians are under your clavicles, so we're just going to tap there. So again, if you want your kidneys to help clear out some of those toxins in your system, we're going to tap that. Your lower intestine, you're going to take the first digit of one hand and tap that on your hypothenar eminence 7 to 12 times. And then the same thing on the other side. And then the last one is a great one, thinking about COVID, but also just thinking about just overall health, is for your immune system and fatigue. This meridian is also called S36. And we're going to tap the fibular heads. And I'm just going to change my camera again one more time, because this is often done in standing, and something I've seen a lot of older Chinese people do. But you take your hands, your fists like this, and you kind of just tap the sides of your legs. And it's supposed to help increase, you bend your knees a little, help increase energy. And you could also do this in sitting before you stood up. If you want your patient to have some little more energy in their system, or you're trying to get them to increase their immune system, but they're still in sitting, they can certainly sit and just tap near their fibular heads. Okay. So hopefully you'll have a little more energy now that you heard that you went through that. So the other part of that, of using your body, to increase your energy, is to also think about just clearing your mind. So a lot of Tai Chi does use sometimes soft music or talking softly to the patient or just getting them to visualize the exercise. There's a lot of, as we'll see, a lot of the exercises talk about water and just about calming things, because having a clear mind, focusing, thinking and visualizing can help with your body movements and vice versa. Exercise we know helps with depression. So there's that mind-body connection. And I know you've talked a lot about that this semester in this class. The other thing Tai Chi does, and we'll talk a little bit about this at the end, is the idea of recognizing what you have to offer. So every patient has something to offer as they're doing Tai Chi, and we have something to offer them. And that's something important for us to think about just in physical therapy. We often are treating a patient, but patients also have a lot to teach us as well. So there is that recognizing what we're giving someone, the gift that we're giving them, the gift of time and listening to them, but also the gift that they bring to us of sharing themselves with us. And if you think about it, every patient is a gift, because if we don't have patients, we don't have a job. So really, no matter how annoying your patient is, that patient is still a gift to you. The last thing that Tai Chi talks about, or a lot of Eastern medicine talks about, is the idea of yin and yang, and that connection between your spirit and your body, or heaven and earth. So the yin is your spirit and your yang is your body, or yin can be up and yang can be down. And then the last one that they've also borrowed from some Eastern medicine is you'll hear people often as they begin or end Tai Chi to use the word namaste. People also use that in yoga. And what that really means is the spirit in me honors the spirit in you. So we can all do that together now, namaste, and we'll do it at the end as well. So Tai Chi does have a lot of benefits. I'm gonna make this a little bit bigger so you can see, but and there has been a lot of research to show what these can do, and these notes will be on the bottom of the PowerPoint I share with you. But a lot of the benefits of Tai Chi can definitely improve balance, because it's using slow, controlled movements. There have been some research studies that show that use of Tai Chi can help someone improve their ankle strategy. So if they're trying to maintain their standing balance in any position, it can help reduce the incidence of falls. So there have been a few studies done with older adults or people with arthritis, and it has helped with their fall. And because it really makes you think about your movements, it can help with motor control, especially during weight transference. Tai Chi spends a lot of time with slow movements and more weight on one side than the other. So there aren't a lot of times in Tai Chi where you have one leg off the ground, although we are going to practice one exercise like that. But because you're shifting your weight so much from one side to the other slowly, it can help with single limb stance and just with functional weight shifting and functional reach. It can help with joint proprioception. So I mentioned it can help with the ankle strategy. Most studies have shown, because Tai Chi, as we'll see as we go through some of the exercises, encourages you to bend your knees quite a bit, and to then bend and straighten your knees. It helps a lot with knee proprioception. So when they've done some actual testing of what proprioception has improved, it's primarily been for the knees. It can definitely help with endurance. Because you are doing a lot of slow, controlled movements, you're moving slowly. So although you're not using a lot of aerobic capacity, it is keeping someone upright and having them move for longer periods of time. So that it can increase standing endurance, and it can increase endurance of how long someone uses their core. Now, there have been studies done showing that doing Tai Chi, so doing it for 20 or 30 minutes at a time, can help increase your heart rate and oxygen consumption. So especially if someone's concentrating on their core, thinking about how they're moving, it can still increase your heart rate. As we talked about, it can improve your immune response, just like all exercises, but especially doing that S36 can, it's not that alone isn't going to help, but just improving your overall health can improve that. In terms of just mental health and exercise, there was a study done using with college students, and they found that doing Tai Chi regularly helped improve the mental health. Students had improvements in ratings of their physical and mental health, but especially their mental health. And that has been true with older adults too. And with older adults, it really seems to be the social aspect of exercise that seems to make people enjoy doing Tai Chi. So I mentioned we did it in our clinic with just one patient, but there were a few of us. And that was, I think, a big part of what she liked, is having all of us do the Tai Chi together with her. And then we're going to go through some very basic Tai Chi exercises today. And I mentioned you can find a lot of videos on the internet. And so you can always make the exercises easier. Most of the exercises we're going to talk about today, we could do in standing or sitting. You can always make them harder by increasing the range, increasing the speed. You could certainly do it on a different surface. You've often, I'm sure, seen or heard of Tai Chi being done outside. So now you're doing that in an uneven surface or in a more busy environment. The more people that are around, that's going to change it, going through a larger range of motion. So it's definitely an exercise where you could do a lot of exercise progression or even exercise regression as you needed to. So I mentioned Tai Chi does a lot of weight shifting, and compared to, as it says here, compared to regular walking, if you're doing Tai Chi, you spend more time in double support versus single limb support, because a lot of the weight shifting is done with shifting weight from one side to the other. But because you're doing a slow movement, if I shift my weight to the left, I'm going to keep it there for a longer period of time. So the amount of time that I'm spent really shifting weight onto that side is going to be longer than I would be if I was just having a patient walk. So that slow controlled movement really can help work on more of the weight shifting that we do in standing, but also in gait without taking your foot off the ground. Whenever you have to move a little more slowly, it does require a little more control, especially if you're shifting weight from one side to the other. And we'll see there's a lot of practice of sidestepping. So we're going to do some exercises that specifically ask people to step to the side or to shift their weight to the side. So we're going to talk a little bit about weight shifting before we get started. As it says on here, your weight shifts should be from the dantian or the pelvis area. So that's your main energy source or your energy vessel. And when you do a diagonal weight shift, you're going to kind of keep, for most of the exercises, you're going to try to keep the heel of the back leg on the ground, but you're going to shift on a diagonal. And in a lateral weight shift, your legs are going to flex. So I'm going to just change my position here so you can hopefully see this a little bit better. And then we're going to just go through some exercise sequences. So as I'm shifting my weight here, I want to make sure that as I'm shifting my weight, it's coming here from my pelvis. So if everyone's going to put I'm going to try to mirror you. So I'm putting my right leg forward, but you put your left leg forward so that you're at a diagonal here. And as you shift forward, the weight shift should really come from your pelvis. So you don't want the patient to shift forward and back this way. You want them to shift their whole body forward onto your left leg. And you can see my right leg as I shift forward. I'm coming forward. I'm not going to really lift that heel up, so I'm not shifting really far forward, although that could be an advanced progression. But for the most part, because we're trying to do just a forward weight shift, you're just going to shift forward and then back. So your back should stay straight and you're shifting really just from the pelvis, shifting forward and back. So as you shift weight onto that forward leg, that knee should flex. The other one, you're getting a nice stretch, and then you're going to shift back. And then you can do the same thing on the other one. You shift forward and then back. And you really want that weight shift to be coming from the core. So as you're talking to a patient, you could be talking to them about making sure that they're tightening up their core, tightening up that energy area, and then shifting forward. And sometimes I'll spend some time just practicing this, because this takes some time for a patient to learn how to do. Because the first thing people want to do is to kind of bend forward instead of shifting their entire body forward. Same thing with shifting side to side. So, and I know some of you have seen this when we've been in the clinic trying to get people to shift their weight. When we ask someone to shift their weight from the left to the right, they tend to do this. So now I've just actually shifted my weight more over to my left side, even though my body shifted to the right. So if we want someone to shift their weight over to my right, your left, I want them to take their whole pelvis and shift that over. The easiest way to do that is to flex your knees. So this is actually a nice quad strengthening activity. So again, I'm going to shift from my dantian. I'm going to shift over to one side and shift over to the other. There's a video I've used. It's called Easy Tai Chi. It's for people with older adults and people with Parkinson's disease. But the instructor there talks about like maybe sitting on a stool and just shifting back and forth. So you just want to shift like that. Now, for people who have arthritis, sometimes they'll say at first that this is uncomfortable, but I often find that as people get more used to this, you see that because they start to strengthen their quads, this becomes an easier part of the exercise for them. So you might find someone who's reluctant to do this at first, and I'll have them just do a small weight shift, and then as they get better, and then they can tolerate more, and you then to go more side to side. And we know that quad strengthening is one of the things that is really helpful for people with arthritis. Okay, so, oops, I didn't mean to do that. So I'm going to go through, there's a list here of sample exercises, and we're going to kind of go through this list. So these are the names that are from the video that I was mentioning, and we're going to go through them. But these names I often use with patients because they're very helpful to give someone just a visual or a thought of how they're supposed to be doing the exercise. Again, using that mind-body connection, having them think about, having a picture in their mind of doing the exercise. And it actually helps to remember what the exercises are, I find, so as you get better at doing these. So there's 6 on this one that we're going to go through. And then on the next slide, there's 6 more. I have pictures of all of these. Some are easier to understand from the pictures than the other. So the video also might be helpful if you decide you want to do these with patients. I'm going to do some of these in sitting, some of them in standing. They can all be really modified to do in either position, except for this very last one, parting the wild horse's mane, which is a walking exercise. So you would need to do that one really in standing. But the rest of these, if a patient needed to, they could practice them in sitting. And I will just point out, all of you have access to Access Physiotherapy, and I will post along with this video, I'll put this all in a Google folder that I can share with you. But in Access Physiotherapy, one of the books that we will use actually next semester is called Improving Functional Outcomes by O'Sullivan and Schmitz. And there's a whole appendix in there that goes through some sitting, Tai Chi, and yoga exercises. So, this is mainstream enough that it's used in some of our textbooks. Okay, so now we're going to go through the exercises, and we're going to start with gathering our chi, which is really gathering our energy. So we're going to go through, and I'm going to do this one in sitting, but you, as I mentioned, you could do this in standing as well if you wanted to. So you can sit or you can stand. I'm going to sit just for the purposes of this demonstration, and caught a bit of cord here. So if you're going to gather your chi, what you're going to have the patient do is put their arms out in front, so they're clasping their hands together, and then they're turning them so their palm faces out. And here's where we're going to really focus on the breath. So you're going to have them lift their arms, take a big breath in. So if you're thinking about cardio, I'm now expanding my chest, which is giving me the best opportunity to be able to inhale and to really expand my lungs. And then I'm going to ask the patient to take that big breath in, and then to exhale and come down. And then again, thinking about just the pulmonary mechanics. As I go down, I'm pushing air out of my lungs, I'm collapsing my lung. So it's going to help with exhalation. So if you have a patient who tends to have trouble with exhalation, this can be helpful. And then once they're down, they're going to gather their chi. So I'm going to talk you through that. And our chi is going to be a ball of energy in this exercise. Okay, so lift our arms out, lift up, big breath in. And then you're going to exhale and down as far as you can. Exhale, so let all the air out.
and touch your hands to the floor, you would do that, kind of get your spine stretched out. And of course, at this point, someone might need to take another breath. And then they're going to gather their chi by making a ball with their hands, and then slowly bringing that ball up and thinking about kind of bringing up one spinal segment at a time. Bringing that ball to their chest, getting in a good posture, so you don't want the patient leaning back in their chair, hopefully at this point, and then putting their hands down. So I'm sitting with my feet with a wide base of support so I can get my chest down there. I'm trying to get the patient to sit upright. Okay, so we're gonna do that one more time. I'm not gonna talk through as much through explanation, and we'll just talk about going through the whole exercise. So arms out, turn them around, big breath in. And now exhale and let your hands come apart as you reach for the ground. Good, touch the floor if you can. Now you're going to make a ball of energy with your hands. Bring it up to your chest. And then you inhale here. And then exhale as you bring your hands down. And I would normally do this 4 or 5 times with a patient so that they get some practice of just moving through that range, and then they get practice of inhaling, exhaling, controlling their breath. So this is a nice, just easy exercise just to work on some breath control. Oops. Okay, so the next one that we're going to do is chi breathing. This is similar. So it's a breath control exercise. Again, you could do it in sitting or standing. The advantage of doing it in standing, as you can see in this picture here, is that the patient is going to be bending their knees as they go through it. So actually, I'm going to go through these slides because I just remembered that if I'm sharing this, I'm pretty small on your screen. So we'll go through all of these again. But the patient is going to have their hands out, their knees slightly bent. They're going to straighten their knees, arms up overhead. That's where they're going to take a big breath in. So again, expanding their chest. And then as they bring their arms down and exhaling, so they're closing their chest a little and bending their knees. So the advantage of doing this in standing is you're practicing some really, small ranges of knee flexion and extension. So similar to sit to stand, but you're also practicing expanding the chest, taking a breath in, and then exhaling and bringing the arms down. So you're working on upper and lower extremity range of motion and strength. And as I mentioned, if you wanted to make this harder, you could certainly go through more range of motion with this exercise and modify it a bit. This next one that's called painting with light, we will go through. I didn't put the first picture is missing, but again, the arms are gonna go up overhead as you exhale and then down as you inhale. And you can see her hand position is a little bit different than the first one. So the advantage of this one is it's going to ask the patient to go into full shoulder flexion with elbow extension and then some wrist extension. So you're kind of moving through the whole range. It's a different way for the patient to move and think about breathing. So we'll go through that one as well. I'm also going through these now because I realized I don't have a good microphone with me. So as I'm standing back and explaining these and demonstrating, you might have a hard time hearing me. Opening the energy gates is similar. So with most of these breathing exercises, you're going to have the patient extend their knees as they breathe in. So you're getting the maximal amount of trunk and limb extension. And then as they exhale, they're going to bend their knees and do an arm motion that's going to bring their chest closer together or facilitate exhalation. So that opening the energy gates is going to go from the position of arms out with a big breath in, arms in as you exhale. And again, we're going to use that knee flexion extension as well to facilitate trunk flexion, a little bit of trunk flexion and definitely trunk extension. Connecting heaven and earth, again, it's a nice breathing exercise. So these are all really, I put these in the order of how you might use them to warm someone up. So we're focusing a lot on breathing in the beginning, a lot on upper extremity range, and just doing some small movements with the lower extremities.
Again, that any of these could be done in sitting. So if your patient's getting tired, if they get to this one and they're tired, you could have them sit and do this the same thing. But you can see in the picture, they're working on shoulder flexion, elbow extension, wrist and wrist extension as well. So for anybody who is lacking arm range of motion, this can be a really nice exercise for them to work on that as well. Then we're going to move on to some lateral weight shifting exercises. So this tree swing exercise, we are going to work on that lateral weight shift. And as we do it, we're going to work on just having someone work on their trunk shifting from one side to the other, working a lot on lateral flexion of the trunk. And again, thinking about that breathing. So if you're thinking about lateral flexion of the trunk, as you lean to one side, you're kind of facilitating exhalation on that side of the trunk, or that side of the lungs, inhalation on the other side, and then the opposite. So you might have the person breathe in on one side and breathe out on the other, and then switch, or take the big breath in when they're in the middle and then exhale on the other side to facilitate exhalation of that side. So if you have someone who has a unilateral pneumonia, this could be a really nice exercise to incorporate into their routine so that they're working on just lung expansion on that side. Chi swimming is another rotational exercise. This is a great one for people with Parkinson's disease or anybody who's lacking rotation, and not just patients with Parkinson's disease. I was doing this with someone who doesn't have Parkinson's disease, and they mentioned that they were actually able to, as they were driving, turn and look to, as they were backing up, to be able to turn because they had been spending more time working on their trunk rotation. So it's a nice, gentle way to work on trunk rotation. You're really just pushing one arm forward and one arm back. In this, he's working on in sitting, but you could definitely do this in standing as well. And then the last few exercises are really much more traditional, kind of what you would think about if you see someone doing Tai Chi in the park. So we're going to work on combining the coordination of moving your arms and your legs together. And in case you have a hard time hearing me when I'm doing the, when I'm standing up, so this, what they're showing here is as I'm pushing the water to the side, and I actually find this is a really helpful metaphor with patients, is in the direction I'm going, that hand's going to be up and it should be over to the side. I'm going to push the water over. So you think about like just creating enough force that you're going to push a whole bunch of water over. And then this is kind of the coordination part. So when I get here, I'm going to flip my hands around so that I can push them to the other side. So I want my hands to be kind of level as I'm doing this. And I know the camera's at an angle, so it's a little harder to appreciate, but when we stand up, you'll be able to see that. So this requires someone to cross midline, to be able to think about which hand needs to be on the top, which hand needs to be on the bottom, but to also cross midline. And I'm going to try to face the camera straight. But as I'm crossing midline, I don't want to rotate my whole body. I just want to move my arms. And I find this is a hard one sometimes for patients to get the idea of, as I'm crossing midline, I'm not turning my body. I'm just doing horizontal AB and A deduction. And then I'm switching and I'm doing horizontal AB and A deduction of the other side. So sometimes it's worth just spending time on this hand motion and then incorporating the lower extremity weight shift. Waves of the universe is going to use the idea of pushing somebody, thinking about pushing a wave forward so that you're using some wrist extension, elbow extension, kind of bring your shoulders into some flexion but forward, and then you're going to point your fingers down and think about lifting that wave up. So now we're doing some wrist flexion, elbow extension, and shoulder flexion, then bringing those arms down. So again, it's a nice work on upper limb coordination, but we're going to coordinate that with some weight shifting activities. Clouds, this is one that we've often seen, so this does require some coordination. The nice thing about this exercise is this pushing the water one that we talked about. You know, both your arms they're in opposite directions, but they're kind of doing the same thing. Same thing with the waves of the universe. Both arms are doing a very symmetrical kind of movement. So this one is kind of opposite and symmetrical because one arm is abducting and one's adducting, but both your hands are kind of moving in the same direction. But clouds requires your arms to do two different things. So I'm going to go through this explanation with the hands, and then we'll go through the whole exercise. But when you're doing clouds, you have one hand up, one hand down, but the hand that's down is kind of going to be the river or the lake, and this hand is going to be the rain coming from the clouds. So you have the rain coming down, filling it up, and then once it's filled, you're going to switch to the other side. So now this hand will be the rain cloud, this hand will be the river, and then you're going to come across. So one hand is your hand's pointing down like this, one hand, your hand is here, and then you're going to switch as you shift. So it requires the patient to kind of think about doing two things at once where their hands are a little less symmetrical. And again, we're going to work on that weight shift of just straight forward, side to side, rather than having the patient twist their body. Now, you could have the patient twist their body. However, if you're trying to get them to dissociate their pelvis and their trunk, having them not rotate for an exercise like this can be really helpful to kind of just get them to loosen up a little bit. And then the last one we're going to do is called Parting the Wild Horse's Mane. I'm going to hopefully be able to talk loud enough so they can hear this. This is a lot of dissociation. The picture that is here does not really do it justice, but the idea is that we're going to do a lot of stretching out of the trunk and the limbs at the same time. So this is going to cause a lot of rotational movements and really get someone to walk slowly. So it's going to work on the controlled weight shift, but it's also a lot of thinking about what's going on with your arms and your hands. And this is a little more advanced exercise for patients just because it's a lot to think about. There's a lot of videos of this. We're going to go through this last one very slowly together, but you can see somewhere people are doing it really pretty quickly and combining a little bit more weight shifting movements. Okay, so we're just going to go through all of these together. I'm going to stop sharing my screen so that I'm a little bigger. I just need to pull up the PowerPoint so that I know what the exercises are. So I do them in the order that we're in this slide here. Okay, so we're going to start with doing some chi breathing. And I'm going to move over here so that hopefully you guys can see me a little bit better. Okay, so chi breathing is the idea is you're going to, as I mentioned, when you're standing up, you're going to have your knees, when you're taking the breath in, your knees will be straight. And when you come down, you're going to bend a little. So I'm going to back up so you can see the whole thing. But we're going to take a breath in. So have your legs a little bit about shoulder width apart. Big breath in. And then you should bring your arms down. You're going to exhale. And then big breath in. And then exhale. And this is something you can do as a nice warm up, but a nice strengthening exercise as well. Down and in. And I would usually do this for about 5 or 6 reps for every exercise, just so the patient gets the practice of doing it, but so it also builds up some endurance. Okay, the next one we're going to do is painting with light, and you can go back and look at your PowerPoint if you need to, but so basically we're going to use the idea of moving the shoulders into flexion and extension, and then moving the elbows, keeping the elbows in extension, moving the wrists into flexion and extension. So the idea with painting with light is that the light is coming from your fingertips as you're coming down. So again, I'm going to have my knees straight and my trunk straight as I inhale, and as I exhale and come down, my knees are going to bend, my wrists are going to be extended. Okay, so we're going to take a big breath in, pull the light up, and then exhale and bring the light down. Good. Big breath in, inhale, and then exhale. Good. Big breath in, inhale, and then exhale. And again, you could make this harder by going down more. You could do it on a different surface. Generally, you're just doing that exhale with a little bit of knee flexion. Someone who has knee pain, I'm going to do less knee flexion. If they really have a lot of knee pain, I might just start with the inhale and the exhale. Okay. So again, you can make that easier or harder. The next one, opening the energy gates, is we're really going to work on also some of that chest expansion. People spend a lot of time sitting forward with that rounded shoulder. So this is going to help a little bit with that as well and encourage some of that breathing. Okay, so, and as they exhale again, we could do this in sitting, but we could also do it in standing, so that as they exhale, they're going to let their knees bend a little bit. So I'm going to take a big breath in and really expand my chest. And then exhale, let my knees bend a little, and bring your arms together. And then inhale and exhale. And as the person's exhaling, they're also thinking about using that dantian, to use your abs to forcefully exhale. It's going to help release some of the air in your lungs. So inhale, big breath in, exhale, and come down. And that, using the core to exhale, is something I would talk about with all of the exercises that we just talked about. Okay, the next one is connecting heaven and earth. And so this is where we're going to do an symmetrical but opposite action with our upper extremities. One arm's going to be up, one arm's going to be back. This is going to really work on some spinal extension. So I'm just going to kneel here for a second. So as you're breathing in, one hand's going to face heaven. So this hand is going to go up toward yin. This hand's going to go down toward yang. And then when you exhale, you're going to bring your arms together. So they're going to come together and face each other. And then you're going to switch. So you're going to do that. Inhale. One arm up, the other arm is down in this position, really stretching the spine. And then as you exhale, the person's going to have them bend the arms a little, come together and switch. So I would be inhaling here, big breath in, getting the person to really stretch their spine as much as they can. And then they can exhale. They sometimes say let their knees soften a bit so they don't have to be all the way in extension. I can be a little bit of flexion. And then we're going to switch sides. Now I'm going to inhale and lift up the opposite arm. So they're getting a lot of shoulder flexion, trunk extension, and also shoulder extension on this side, working on wrist extension with both. I'm going to exhale and then inhale. Okay, and this seems like a pretty simple exercise, but for a lot of people who don't do a lot of trunk stretching, this can actually be a nice stretch for somebody. Okay, and then the next one we're going to do is tree swaying. So this is really going to work a lot on motion of the lateral trunk flexion. Also helpful for people who spend a lot of time sitting. People often lose this range over time, and not just older adults, but even all of us. So we're going to start out with your arms here. So this is usually your starting position so that your hands are near your dantian. My knees are a little flexed. But then I'm going to do a big inhale, bring my arms up over my head. And then we're going to have, this is where we're going to practice that lateral weight shift. So your knees need to be a little bent. So I'm going to shift over to one side. I can exhale here. And you can have the patient turn and look toward their hand. So now they're working on some trunk rotation. Exhale, big breath in, arms up overhead, and then exhale and turn and look to the other side. So there's a lot of things going on in this pretty simple exercise. There's a lot going on. So I'm not just inhaling and exhaling. I'm also, as I turn, I'm turning my body and looking. So I'm getting some trunk rotation in there. It causes some concentration. I'm working on the breath. I'm working on the inhale and the exhale. I'm working on coordinating my left and my right. And I'm also working on that trunk mobility of left side to right side. And I mentioned if someone had a unilateral lung dysfunction, this could be really helpful for them. But for anybody who maybe is developing a scoliosis or has a hard time just incorporating trunk movements from one side to the other, that can be a really helpful exercise. And I would probably do that 5 or 6 times to each side, depending on the patient. And again, you can make that easier or harder by encouraging the patient to go through more range. You can put them on a less stable surface. I probably wouldn't go much faster because you really do want to make sure you're getting that stretch in there. So this is one exercise where it would be really beneficial maybe to, instead of going faster, to hold it longer. So I'm holding that weight shift, but I'm also getting a nice stretch of my trunk on either side. I'm just doing that because it feels good. Okay, so I'm going to move on. So the chi swimming exercise, again, you could do this in sitting or standing. At this point, the patient might need a little bit of a break to sit, depending on your patient, but you could definitely do this in standing. But the idea is that as one hand's coming forward, the other hand's coming back. And so there's going to be some automatic trunk rotation. Now, I'm not trying to like really rotate my body, so I'm going to keep facing forward, and they're going to feel a stretch on their spine as they're doing this. So I'm kneeling right now, but I could certainly do this in standing so that I might have my feet together, but I'm working on just stretching one side forward and back. So you're getting some nice trunk rotation. Or you could do this in sitting so that you're kind of got one side forward and back. And as I mentioned, this can really actually, even though I'm not looking back, just this stretch of the spine can help someone with their rotation. And if you want, if you thought, like I mentioned, that someone I worked with used this and said it actually helped with them being able to look behind them as they were backing up, you could incorporate that if you wanted to and get a little more. That's not the exact position, that's not the exact exercise, but you could certainly modify any of these. You know, if you're using Tai Chi as part of your practice, you don't have to do them exactly the way they were initially designed either. The next one is push waters to the side. And so this is the idea of having your hands kind of symmetrical, moving in the same direction, but one hand's horizontally abducting, the other hand is horizontally adducting. And this is where you get to really, again, work on that weight shift coming from the pelvis. So as I'm standing, I'm going to have one hand here, one hand here. I'm going to shift my weight. My knees are bent a little. I'm going to back up in a second. So you might have the patient breathe in, breathe out as they come here, and then switch, and then breathe. And you could have them breathe in on one side and breathe out on the other side. Or you could have them breathe in when they get to the middle and then breathe out. It's usually easier to have them breathe in as I'm coming over here to this side, breathe out, breathe in, breathe out. And if you're going slower, you're going to be able to modify that to their breath cycle. But I'm really just working on that straight lateral weight shift. So that's where I need to have my knees bent a little. Oops. Have my knees bent a little so that I can do that weight shift, but also get that nice lateral movement. Because what I don't want to have the patient turning like this, because that's not going to be as helpful for that straight lateral weight shift. And it is amazing how over time people lose this ability to just shift their weight from their trunk. And so that's the other reason why you might not want to encourage this rotational weight shift, which could be helpful for some people. But it makes it harder for them to dissociate their upper and their lower body. And again, that's one you might do several times. People generally like that exercise because it's not strenuous, but it does require some thought. So the next one, waves of the universe, what we're going to do is we're going to have that position where your legs are on a diagonal and we're shifting forward and back. So just as a reminder, as I shift forward, you can't really see, as I shift forward, my front leg is my front knee is gonna flex, my back legs, the heel's gonna stay on the floor. And we want that weight shift to come from the pelvis. So the waves of the universe, my arms are gonna push forward, and then I'm gonna lift the waves up and come back. And shift forward, and then come back. So you can think about it as you're pushing the wave forward, and then you're pulling the wave back. And that's often what I'll say to somebody: push the wave water forward, pull the water back. As you're thinking about breathing, they can exhale here, inhale as they come up. Exhale, inhale. And then you would want to have them switch sides so that they're getting that weight shift to both sides. So I'm going to exhale here, exhale, inhale, exhale, inhale, exhale, inhale. And I will say is if you work on that weight shift and someone really can't keep their back heel on the ground, that's okay. You can really modify this as you need to. Okay, and then the last really weight shifting one we're going to do is the clouds. So again, we're going to work on that hand position of the rain coming down, filling up the lake or the river, and then switching and coming back the other way. So you're going to be doing this and then this. So it's kind of like you're holding a ball and then you're switching the side. And again, we're going to work on that lateral weight shift. So think about the inhale and the exhale. I'm saying this now because I have a feeling it's going to be hard for you to hear me that you're having a hard time hearing me when I'm way back. Okay, so here we go. We're going to go back and you're going to be doing that lateral weight shift. We're going to shift over this way. And then once we get here, we're going to shift over. So now this hand is the cloud, this hand is the lake. And now I'm going to take an inhale here. Exhale as I come back over. Inhale. Exhale. This is helping to prolong the exhalation here too. So inhale. And I could work on a larger range of motion of my arms. And maybe even going a little slower or a little faster. And again, I've been talking through a lot of this, but as the patient gets better, hopefully you would give them fewer verbal cues and just have them follow you, or else just do it on their own as they're thinking about it. So that's the other consideration, is that I might not, I'm talking through a lot of these right now and giving you a lot of verbal cues, but as patients get better, we want to fade that verbal feedback and hopefully have them either just mimic you, or you tell them what the exercise is and they do it on their own so they can do it as a home exercise program. Okay, so the last one we're going to do is called Parting the Wild Horse's Mane. And as we do this, we're going to have one hand forward, one hand back. As I step forward, so this is my right hand. As I step forward with my right, I'm going to move my right hand forward, and I'm going to move my left hand. I'm going to push it back so that I'm really getting a lot of elongation of my body here. And I'm going to coordinate that with my step. So this one does require a lot of coordination. So the leg that's forward is the leg that the hand is forward, but you're getting a lot of elongation. So it's a little bit different from regular gait, where technically the arm that's forward is the opposite, is the contralateral arm. We're going to do the unilateral arm being forward on the leg to which you're shifting. And then you bring the hands back together, and then we're going to switch so that this arm, which would be my left arm, is forward as I step with my left leg. I'm going to push the other arm back. So I'm going to step back. I'm not going to talk while I'm doing this because you're not going to be able to hear me. Sorry, you're not going to be able to hear me. But basically, this arm, the arm that's going forward, is going to push forward so that your palm's going forward. The other one, you're going to end up kind of pushing back. So it's called Parting the Wild Horse's Mane because you're thinking about taking the front of their mane and kind of pushing it forward and the back all the way back to their tail. So you're really stretching out your back as much as you can, and you're taking very slow steps as you're doing this. So a lot of this is coordination. This is a real mind-body exercise. I'm going to step way back and just go through it, and you guys can try to follow me. You can also follow up and do this in class sometime as well. see me well enough. No, not probably made it worse. Okay. I'm gonna try to turn one more light on here. It looks like that. Okay, so I'm gonna have my hands here. Oh, okay, the other part that I'm gonna mention is that as I step, I'm gonna first, the leg that I'm stepping with, so if my right arm is gonna come forward, my right leg is gonna be back, and I'm first gonna shift my weight back onto that leg. So I'm gonna do a backward weight shift, and then I'm going to step forward with that leg. So it's a series of shifting back, taking a step, and then after you step forward with that side, you're going to shift back onto the leg that's getting ready to take a step. So instead of doing regular walking, you're kind of stepping back, take a step back, take a step, lean back, take a step, lean back, take a step, lean back, take a step. So all the leg that's going to be the swing face leg, you're going to shift your weight back onto that first before you do the swing face. Here. Step to my right. Shift back. Okay, it's a little complicated. It takes a little bit of practice. That's a nice challenge for a patient to really think about that. So that's pretty much it for Tai Chi. There's way more Tai Chi exercises than what we did here today. But that would be a good start for patients, especially if they're just getting new to Tai Chi, or if you're just getting new to Tai Chi, or if you're working with someone with balance problems. That's a really good start because you can work on bending forward, reaching side to side, shifting your weight side to side. One last thing I'll just add is that even that gathering chi exercise, if you did it in standing, that was the one where you were sitting and reaching down, you could then have someone bend down to gather their chi and really work on touching the floor. So there's a lot that you could do with these exercises. So I hope you try them with some of your patients. If anyone wants to try them in pro bono, we would be happy to work on it with you. And I guess that's it. Thank you guys for your attention.